So today's video is for all my bike carb converters out there. And what I want to do today is try and save you some time and some money when adapting your car's throttle cable to your set of motorcycle carburetors. Now, the length of your car's throttle cable is perfectly adapted to your stock throttle body and your intake manifold. Now, when you decide to remove all of those stock things and install a set of motorcycle carburetors, your car's throttle cable probably isn't going to be the right length anymore. Now, when I say probably, I mean 99.99% of the cases, unless you're super lucky and it all fits just perfectly, but it won't. So there's a couple of ways you can try and resolve this issue. Now, approach number one is to buy a different throttle cable. Simply go to the junkyard or go to a motorcycle shop or wherever and find a new throttle cable that is the perfect length needed for your bike carb conversion. Now, I couldn't do that because the engine in the Toyota MR2 is in the back. It's behind the driver. And that makes the throttle cable really long. So I went to a couple of junkyards, I went to a few motorcycle shops, but everything they sold was quite a bit shorter, than what I already had, in the, what I needed actually. So what I decided to do was to adapt what I already had, and make my stock throttle cable work with my bike carbs. Now, in doing that, I realized that it's actually a lot easier to do that than to remove the throttle cable and replace it, because this takes less time, and less work. So here's how I did it. Now, I ran into three issues when adapting the throttle cable to operate my motorcycle carburetors. Issue number one was that the throttle cable bracket on the carbs was all wrong. It had a sort of a L-shaped profile, and I simply could not attach the two nuts of my throttle cable onto the little bracket on the carbs. So this was easy to solve. Just get an angle grinder, and shave off what you do not need on the bracket. Now, issue number two was that little tiny thing at the end of the throttle cable, I don't know, maybe there's a word for the tiny thing, but I'll just keep calling it tiny thing for now because I don't know the word. Now, that tiny thing at the end of my Toyota's throttle cable was too big for any of the two holes in the throttle lever of the bike carbs. This was again really easy to solve, a crude problem that requires a crude solution. Just get some sandpaper or some sort of grinder, and waste half an hour shaving off, and reshaping the tiny thing so it can, be inserted into the hole on the throttle lever. Now, when I resolved those two things, I ran into the third and the most complex issue when adapting my throttle cable. Now, the issue was that the distance from the bracket on the carbs, where the throttle cable is attached, the distance from there to the throttle lever was all wrong for my throttle cable. Now, I could install my throttle cable, but the first half of the throttle cable, of the throttle pedal's travel was actually wasted. The throttle pedal had a lot of play, and the first half of the travel was simply wasted on tightening the cable, and then the bottom half of the throttle pedal's travel would actually engage and disengage the throttle lever. Now, this of course isn't really good, and it simply would feel horrible when driving the car. You basically have this much of travel, in your throttle, and it would just feel wrong. Now, so what I needed to do was to somehow increase the distance, between the bracket, the point where the cable is attached to the throttle lever. And I did it by making this little adapter. Now, here's a little blueprint of the adapter. You can also find a download link in the video description. And you can then print out this little blueprint. And if you're doing a bike carb conversion on a 4AG engine in a Mark 1 Toyota MR2, you can just take the blueprint to the machine shop and tell them, make this. And this is going to save you quite a bit of time explaining, to the machine shop what needs to be done, and the machine shop is going to appreciate it because it'll be a lot easier to understand what they need to do. So here's how the throttle adapter looks. At the top, you have an internal thread, M8 internal thread. Now this is perfectly suitable to the thread on the throttle cable. So once you remove the nuts from the throttle cable, you can simply screw in the cable into the top of the adapter. And then you can use the cut made in the adapter to simply slide in the cable. And then you can use the same two nuts from the throttle cable to attach the adapter to the bracket on the bike carbs. And what it does is that it actually increases the distance from the cable to the lever, and it makes the cable perfectly tight. And as you can see here, there is no more play in the throttle pedal. And this is going to mean perfect throttle response and perfect throttle feel when driving the car. Another really cool thing is that since the adapter is a bit long, it also makes, the distance between the cable and the lever adjustable. The more or the less you screw in the bracket into the adapter, that's the way you can adjust, the distance, and you can adjust how tight your cable is. Also what I have done is I have tested it, installed, and the top of the adapter doesn't hit the engine lid on the MR2. So there you go, a super simple, super easy solution to make your throttle cable work on your bike carbs. I'm also pretty sure that a lot of Keihin motorcycle carburetors have the exact same, bracket lever configuration, and this might work on a bunch of different bike carbs. But for now, I'm only certain that it works on the Honda CBR F4 bike carbs and the MR2 and 4AG engine carb combo. So there you go. As I said, a short, but I hope a useful video that can save you some time, money, and frustration. So that's pretty much it for today. Pretty short, pretty simple. If you have any sort of questions, of course, don't forget to ask in the comment section. I will be, coming back soon with some more fun and entertaining content. I'm in the process still of tuning the bike carbs, but I'm very near to the sweet spot, and I think we should be there soon. The giveaway is going to be probably next weekend, next Sunday. There's going to be a massive giveaway, as I already said, of of MR2 and 4AG parts. Some of them are big, some of them aren't. Never mind. So stay tuned for that. I might announce it, in the next video or in some of those new YouTube things where you can just make little posts and not put up videos. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. As always, don't forget to share, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll be seeing you soon with more fun and useful stuff on the D4H.